Hey there, www.andrewmartinmusic.com. Another late night in the van, informal chat. This one, will the real slim, shady Jesus please stand up? So, nothing is obvious here. There's anything to do with metaphysics basically has to be taken on faith. And the secondary aspect of faith is whether you take any scripture authoritatively. And so with those two caveats out of the way, I don't take any scripture authoritative, and I'm willing to consider metaphysical speculations as long as they have some coherence. Hopefully a lot of coherence as far as, speculation goes. Like, your speculations can't be inherently irrational and illogical. So the first alternative notion of Jesus that I'm going to cover about four of them that I think are pertinent to the discussion, and I think they're the likeliest alternative possibilities if we just move away from, authoritative canon narratives. So the first one is Judas Christus, the Jewish insurrectionist who is said to have performed his insurrection around the turn of the century there. So I think it's 6 AD. And I think he did exist. I think he did do what they say he did. I just don't think that he had the ability to write the Gospels. In my view, whoever wrote those had the means, the education, the money, and the power. It weren't no fishermen writing those books, okay? So these were works of extreme ability. So I just, from what I can gather on the Judas Christus character, I don't think his lineages had the ability to write these books. And that doesn't mean that some of the narratives surrounding him weren't put into the books of the Gospels. I'm sure they probably were here and there. So that's the first one. And although I get it, it's just not what I subscribe to. I think the second one is the Vedic. This is kind of new agey idea that Jesus was Krishna, the avatar Krishna, come to, stir things up and get things right in the Middle East at that time. Now, I've got blogs on this issue, and it's just, although I get it, it's something that I don't subscribe to, and I'm not going to go into all the many reasons here why I don't really think it works. Now, so I'm not going to touch much. I'm not going to really spend much time on the Vedic avatar theory, but what I will say is the Marcionite Church has a similar notion, a Docetic notion, about Jesus just appearing in Capernaum in September of 29 AD as a fully grown man. So this takes away all the birth narratives and all the linking him to Jewish lines through David and things like that. That just nixes that, right? So that's very similar to an avatar theory of Christ. So although I am a Docetist, I I don't ascribe it to being Krishna. Now I'm going to get to where Eastern ideas obviously influence those books and his teachings to the degree that we can accept them as something that really happened and something that someone really said. So the next one, where I think is, to me, the most plausible, is the Egyptian theory of Christ. And there's not going to be one theory here, but I'm just going to focus on one. The first one I would say is there's obviously correlations, pretty direct correlations between Isis and Horus and Jesus and Mary. But this in no way means that Horus was born on December 25th. This is myth, and Jesus wasn't born on December 25th either. They're both myths. That all has to do with astrotheology and how we experience the sun on this earth. So, the zeitgeist version of the Horus story is false. So let's get that out of the way right away. But to get to this kind of Eastern philosophy idea of Christ, you can make it work within the Egyptian version of Christ. But to get there, we have to just play a little game here as far as considering things. Now, it's based on the lineages, the royal houses, what's called the first faction of the Jews, that came out of the Hyksos pharaohs. Now, their lines eventually, in my view, merged into the Ptolemies, right? So they were Greek, Hellenized, how shall we say, hidden, occulted, stealth. The Hyksos Hebrew Jewish aspect of their rule was hidden. Okay, so they were Greek in appearance. As far as exoteric, as far as the public projection of who they are, they were Greek. But within their blood was the royal lineage of the Hyksos. Now, this takes us to Cleopatra, and Cleopatra had a son with Julius Caesar. So he was the son of God. Now I know, look at, this is just my own personal quirky thing here, and I know it's dismissed by everybody because it's the lowest of the low possibility that nobody ever wants to even give a second of time to. So goodbye, see you later, but I'm going to carry on here. There's no evidence whatsoever for the historic claims about Cleopatra's death, about Julius Caesar's death, about Caesarion's death. There's no burial grounds found. There's no bodies of any of them. If you want to believe that story, go ahead and believe it, the official stories, narratives, but you're taking the authority of a narrative that has no real life historical evidence for it. So you have to take the word of historic authority figures. And go ahead and do that. I'm not stopping you. If that's what you want to do that. So the first thing is that there is no record of any of that family's deaths. You just have to take it on the view of authoritative historians. Okay, so with that out of the way, these people who were Hyksos royalty, occulted, stealth, wanted to remain that way. So they even wanted the way the Gospels were written. Please understand that the way the Gospels are written is written by these people, right? These are the people who wrote these stories. How can you not even bring yourself to consider that? Is that your bias and your conditioning is so strong to dismiss something that makes absolute sense, that these occulted first faction Hyksos, Greek and Roman now bloodline within that family, these are the people. I mean, you've got people like Charles M. Pope, that Domain of Man site, who goes into this. His book, Jesus and the Julio-Claudians. So, here's the thing. People laugh at the Caesarean theory. The people who are laughing at it have no problem going, oh yeah, Noah lived for 1,000 years, But to have Caesarean be 80 years old in 30 AD is just out of the question. It's impossible, even if he looked half his age. Now, it's the critics of this will go, it's impossible that he looked half his age. Oh, is it? I don't think so. I mean, this is a God man who's lived the perfect life, as much as anybody can here, as far as always having everything provided, have the best education, the best knowledge about health, everything. It's not impossible that this was a very young man. Now, another aspect of this, and you have to, I'll just jump back to the first one there with Judas Christus. There's a 30-year timeline about why it gets dismissed, the Judas Christus. But there are people out there who will concede the possibility that even the official stories are up to 30 years off. And if we just take that now, that would put Jesus somewhere in his 50s in 33 AD, having been born in 47 BC, and looking half his age at 50. At that point, he looks like a 25-year-old man. So that fits the official timeline precisely. You've got a very young-looking God man on Earth who's Hebrew royalty mixed with Greek royalty mixed with Roman royalty. Now the thing is this family wanted to stay hidden. So eventually, through their influence in the Flavian dynasties, their lineages worked together to write the Gospels. The primary reason was to keep Caesarean's lineages hidden, right? And his wife and sister Celine, Mary Magdalene, and his stepbrother Didymus Thomas, who wrote the Book of Thomas. And so I'm going to have to skip around here a little bit, and forgive me for that, but I should touch on that because that's where it gets to India, because it was Joseph of Arimathea and his wife Mary that would have taken Caesarean to India while they were in conflict. Now, whether the conflict with Octavian was real or not, who knows? But for this narrative, it was Joseph of Arimathea and his wife Mary who Cleopatra entrusted Caesarion with to go to India, and that's where Caesarion would have picked up and studied with all the Vedic scholars. So I think that's where we bring the Eastern philosophy into this. And there's no way that Joseph of Arimathea is going to believe any bullshit from messengers sent by Octavian. Oh, please come back to Rome. Yeah, this is just utter nonsense and rubbish and bullshit. So let's just say that Joseph of Arimathea and his wife took Caesarion to India, and they studied there. And then eventually he comes back to Alexandria, and he hooks up with his siblings again, and through stealth create this narrative of a new empire, right? How to get back at their enemies. And they were successful at that, and they partnered with the Flavians to write the New Testament Gospels. And that's basically it. And, to me, this is just as likely as Atwell's Roman Titus conspiracy view of Jesus, which I just think is just a little bit too perfect. Like when you read Atwell's work, I mean, it just all fits just too nicely. That's the problem with it for me. So this, from my point of view, it's telling me that I'm right, that the this occulted line of Hyksos did merge, at least ideologically, with the Flavians, and it's the Romans. It's the Romans who they have no Jewish blood in them. It's Titus who is Jesus, right? And then coincidentally, over the next few centuries, it's all adopted by Rome. So I just touched on Atwell's theory there, and I don't accept it. One of the major reasons I don't accept it is because in our world today, there's no injunctions against speaking against Rome. You could say anything you want against Rome, but there's injunctions about speaking against one certain group of people from the Middle East everywhere. You can go to jail now for just talking about them. So that's one of the major reasons I reject Atwell's view. Along with, to me, like I said, it just fits too well, and that's too much of coincidence. And I think that was scripted to be that way by Mary Magdalene and Caesarian's lines. Who now this is where it gets really interesting, because if they were Hyksos, and that means Thoth. So I'm not going to get into the Atlantean aspect of this, but this means that Thutmosis III was the warrior king of the 18th dynasty, and his life story written in Egypt about him is almost word for word the life story of David in the Bible, where there's absolutely no evidence for that. It's a complete fiction. But the Thutmosis III, the warrior king, there's just ample evidence that there's a real story with a real amazing warrior king, who is, in this view, just happens to be a culted Hyksos. So first faction, Hebrew bloodline. So you have this Thothian reincarnation lineage under this metaphysics, speculative, conspiratorial, sure. And that line works its way to Alexander the Great, and I think there's even esoteric writings where he admits it. Yeah, I'm the reincarnation of Thoth, and then I'm not sure about that one. I might be making that part up, but what I'm not making up here within this conspiracy, these speculations, is the linkage between Alexander and Jesus. So you could do your own research there, but it's uncanny, and it does mean that Cleopatra and her son are Isis Thoth, right? So this makes this Caesarean. This makes Caesarean Jesus, and this is under the Egyptian alternate theory of Christ, of who Christ was, and it accounts for the Vedic aspect of it, as I've just covered. And then this family, first faction bloodline, rolls out into France and, become all the kings and queens of Europe. This is well attested to on Conspiracy Lane. So yeah, that's it. Now, the final part here would be, okay, so like, is this a good guy? Is he a white hat? Or is he an archon? And if you see my blog, Judaism is a Egyptian Spirituality, in that blog I say I remain agnostic on it, on the lineages under this speculation of the pharaohs. Now, to me, the first couple of thousand years, I can grant that to hold a civilization together to that degree when it's corrupt, I find implausible. So I'm willing to grant early on that maybe the Egyptian pharaohs were the good guys. I say that tentatively. But once the Hyksos got involved and merged and took over the thrones there, all occultedly and stealthily, then I find their lines more archontic. And so I'm not willing to grant that they're the white hats. And there are people out, putting stuff out there today like Dan Winter and Dahlia, who are saying that they are the white hat Thothian Jesus lines. Perhaps. I'm not convinced. The thing with my view here as a Sethian Christian Gnostic, and I'm a Docetist, so anybody who has any rational faculties and good investigative abilities knows that the birth story of Jesus Christ is complete myth. It's just complete fiction. They did that to tie it to this fictional David character who is really Egyptian. So the idea of this kind of docetic view of Jesus coming through these lines, I think is more. It's more rational. It doesn't have the superstitious aspect to it. I think it's how shall we say, a little bit more coherent anyway. I'm losing my train of thought here, but the reason I think that they are more archontic, these lines, is because of the way I interpret their own symbolism, how they present themselves. Like, I am the bright morning star. I mean, that's Venus, right? And to Sethian Christian Gnostics, that's archontic. That the planets are archontic. That they're controlled by the demiurge. They're the archons of the demiurge. The Saturn, these are the intelligences, the AI intelligences that control the reincarnation template. So I'm not willing to grant, even though I think, this is who I think the real Jesus actually was, I'm not willing to actually grant that they're white hats. What's interesting to me, though, is the twin trope. And I think they worked that in there, but I think they also did it to hide something else, which is more metaphysical. And this is the view I hold when it comes to the twins. The twin theory is another fringe theory of within the who is Jesus thing. And I have to take you to the secondary writings, the lost books of Adam and Eve, where it says that it took Adam, who is as close to the pleroma as you could possibly get as a human, it took him 1,000 years to tell the difference between Christ and what it says Satan, but I'll use the word Yaldabaoth here. So they couldn't tell the difference. Now, ask yourself this. If someone who is so close to the pleroma couldn't tell the difference for 1,000 human years, what makes you think you can? Right? So the point being is that I think there was some kind of cosmic drama played out in that age, and in my view, it was played out between two people that human beings cannot tell the difference of if you look at them, because they're twins, but one of them represents what the good one said is, you are the father of lies, right? And then the good one, the white hat, he would be the one I would subscribe to, the Docetic, who just appears on Earth. Now, in this view, he was actually challenging Caesarian and Thoth, because Caesarian Thoth is an archon, right? And this Docetic view, who has no affiliation with the planet, so he would have never called himself I am the bright morning star. That's not how the Aeon Jesus would have ever referred to himself, because those are archontic. So try to follow my line of reasoning here about how I get to this place where there's the possibility of twins when it comes to the Jesus character, and human beings cannot tell them apart. It takes, even for the best of us, 1,000 years to differentiate bullshit from truth, or lies from truth. And that the Aeon Christ would never have been born through a human. But the Archon Jesus, as Caesarian Thoth, was born through a human and born through the reincarnation template. So this is my alternative theory on who I think is the most likely character that was involved in the cosmic dramas at those times. And there's a number of them, like Judas Cressus was real, okay? Caesarion was real, right? Titus was real. These were all real people who really lived that all have some connection to the official narrative. Like Judas Christus, he has some of the narratives that are true there do find their way into the Gospels. And it's the same with Titus. His life story does fit just a lot of things that went on in the Gospels. The same can be said to a lesser degree with the Julius Caesar clan in general. But that gets into more of a later thing about what happened with the Roman Church and Saul Invictus and things like that. That's a little less obvious when it comes to Caesarion's line. So I guess I'll finish up here by saying, yes, it seems like the major issue, if one was to even consider what I'm saying here. Okay, so what's going on today? Who is who within this context? And that's probably not easy to figure out. Although I do think one of the clues is AI, and that anybody that's promoting AI within any Jesus context is archontic, and that would be one clue. So any true version of Jesus is going to totally reject the AI interface that they want to implement. And that's probably our best hint about who is who here today. Again, I'm only doing this as a thought exercise. If somebody wants to take the Bible authoritatively about, that he was a Jew, then go ahead, but there's no evidence for it. It's a completely faith-based, on giving all the authority to a book. So you have to basically dismiss all the evidence and just say, I'm just going to believe what this book says, no matter what, even though there's no evidence for it. So that's fine. If that's what people want to do. I'm not actually here to convince anybody of anything. I'm just talking informally as a Sethian Christian Gnostic, putting out what I think could be possible. In the Sethian view, Christ was that template for Yaldabaoth to mimic him to in such an uncanny way that humans can't tell the difference between them. So, but it was Christ who is the progenitor. He existed before Yaldabaoth. So, in this view, to say that Jesus is the son of the demiurge is ridiculous. It's absurd. But again, you have to consider what I'm saying here to get to that point. So, yes, this is still ongoing. This isn't a myth that has no consequence today. It's everything that's going on this earth right now is about this issue. It's all about this. 100% it's about this issue. And I guess we're all going to find out. But as a Sethian Christian Gnostic, just the idea that Christianity has been reduced to cheerleading for genocide is despicable. I mean, when you let your enemies, people who hate you, write the narratives of what you should believe as a church, you're in big trouble. So as a pragmatist, as someone who could just step outside of metaphysics and look at the culture wars, and that if Christianity, especially white European Christianity, wants to have any hope within a pragmatic view of survival, and just face the facts that nobody knows when Jesus is coming back, it could be 10,000 years from now. The pragmatic thing to do is to implement what could save your culture, and the first thing that has to happen if you're a white Christian is you just have to just put a brick wall between the New Testament and the Torah, as far as pragmatism goes, and just, call him Jesus, Father. He never said that there's not one shred of evidence that he referred to himself as Yeshua. The earliest reference written in stone, I think it's in the Marcionite church, is Jesus the Good Shepherd, written in Greek, right? So it's not Yeshua, it's Jesus. And then he never referred to himself as the Son of Yahweh. And so you can be a Christian and go, he's Jesus, and he says to us to pray to the Father. This is perfectly acceptable way to save Christianity and just stop the cheerleading for genocide, stop supporting people who do not have your best interests and who actually hate you and in the end want you annihilated. This is insane to cheerlead for that. And no matter what version of Jesus ends up being the truth, for the church, for the white Christian church to continue doing what they're doing today is suicidal. It's a form of spiritual suicide based on deception. So anyway, those are some of the alternative theories on Christ. I have my little fringe theory. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything there. Do your own research. Come to your own conclusions. But Egypt is something to be reckoned with historically, especially if you go down the rabbit hole further to Atlantis, which I'm not going to do here. But I think that the Jesus character just fits Egyptian spirituality. So the only thing in my mind is, are they white hats or black hats? As my view of Sethian Christian Gnostic, I think they're more on the black hat side. Something's got to change on this planet. I'm just going to finish up here on a little bit of a tangent. I wanted to talk about a book that just was released called Life, an expose. It's by a YouTube channel, Social Experimentalist. And you have to give an account of what he's written in this book, which is explicit and detailed about what a brutal place this place is. And for any Christian Gnostics who are gonna, or even spiritualists, and I'm referring to two specific people here, John Lam Lash and Chief Ironbush, if you're going to hold this, Sophia created this place, you've got to give an account, detailed account on the points made in this book about, if you're going to ascribe the earth and the brutality here to Sophia, you need to give a detailed account and rebuttal to this book. Because in my view as a Sethian Christian Gnostic, Sophia didn't make this place. This is the creation of the mind of the demiurge, what's called, appropriately called abominable intelligence. Do an account of, if you're going to hold the view that the earth is made by the Great Mother, like, indigenous people do and things like that, do give an account of it. Like, don't just hand wave away this book and all the very, very accurate things that are pointed out here that really represent accurately what life is here. So, I mean, it's a real problem for that school. It's not a problem for the Sethian school. I think it's just, as far as Orthodox Christianity, they don't even come close to addressing this issue in any honest way. The only other religion that I think does have a rebuttal to it is the Vedic schools where they teach that the earth is the center, and it's a special place because they say here, in my view, that it's flat, but let's not go there. But this place in the center with 7 below and 7 above, and these aren't hells, these are just below, places that are resided below, depending on your karma. But this place is special in the Vedas because it's the one place out of the 14 where you can actually alter your karma. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows? But I think at least it's a coherent rebuttal to the horror of this place, which, if you have an honest person teaching the Vedas, they'll tell you this, and this is nothing that should be controversial because the Jains understood this. The very earliest Vedic people understood the horror of this place, the Jains, Samkhya, so this should not be controversial at all, how brutal this place is. And so there's this one plane of existence here that's brutal, but it's brutal for a reason. Now, just to finish up here on that point, the reason everything is so confused, according to this view here, and so absolutely screwed up here, is because we entered into the Kali Yuga 5,000 years ago, which is an ordained age that Brahma wants of materialism for 432,000 years. In the common parlance of the Vedas, this 4,232,000 years started 5,000 years ago. I know this is disputed. This is besides the point, but let's just run with it. And this means that all the other lokas still exist, but this one's quarantined for 432,000 years on the order of Brahma, right? So that my guess is he wants to see how far materialism can go in this amazing game of hide and seek he's going to play with himself here. And apparently if you take this metaphysics as real, this has happened billions and billions of times before, because Brahma's and the universe is infinitely, and there's infinite souls and infinite places, and it's all just infinite. So none of this is absolutely bizarre as far as Vedic cosmology is concerned. It's all just run of the mill, right? For Brahma to want to, sit back and watch how far materialism can go, no problem. That's completely consistent with the Vedic cosmology. Not saying it's true, but I'm saying at least there's a decent rebuttal, or somewhat decent rebuttal, to why this place is a horror show. And the Abrahamic traditions, Orthodoxy, no matter which one, Judaism, it's a lie. If you base your religion on Judaism, you have a religion based on lies. And this is why they cannot address the problem of evil in any way that comes anywhere near to be sufficient. And the people who are saying within the Gnostic community that this is of Sophia, you got a problem there, in my opinion. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. I think I've said everything I wanted to say here. Andrew Martin Music. Ciao.